Good evening, and welcome to another session of Conversationists. And today we have a very esteemed guest, Mrinalini Singh. And welcome to the show, Mrinalini. And
Thanks, Chavi. Thanks for having me.
yeah. And before I introduce Mrinalini, let me just give a brief introduction of Conversationists. Conversationist Talking Cures is not only a one-stop center for all your mental health and well-being needs, but it should be a movement that brings psychology, mental health to every household and every age group, and it should be within the reach of every age group. Our aim is to start a new way of conversing. Our aim is to break stigmas, taboos, and make mental health a very mainstream, everyday affair. And at Conversationist Talking Cures, we provide you a safe space which is confidential, non judgmental, so that people can share their stories. It is a place for catharsis, it is a place for healing, introspection, and we hope that this becomes the new way to converse. And today we have with us in the continuing series, आज हमारे साथ ये हमारा बहुत हम लोग बहुत सौभाग्य है और हम लोग आज जिनको has done a post graduation in clinical psychology from University of Delhi. Thereafter, she explored various fields, including editing for a computer magazine, working as an executive for a PR company, designing for events for company, product launches, writing features for a magazine, and using her varied experiences to understand human endeavor and psyche. She began painting and poetry since childhood, both of which she learned from her late father in 1996-97. She exhibited her abstract series under the title Explorations at Color. After a 4-year stint in the animation industry, she undertook a post-graduation course in construction management and now is working in a private company, and it's been more than 15 years. This is a formal introduction, but let me tell you that Mrinalini, it's a very interesting combination. You know, you're a clinical psychologist by education, and then you went on to, and of course, artist. You are a born artist because I've seen your paintings, the exhibitions, art and poetry. The creativity comes so naturally to you. And today you are in a company from the past 15 years, which very few women are in the really very high position. So in a construction factory, a real estate company, to be at that post, and which is, I mean, most people will say it's in stark contrast to what you are as an artist and your artistic abilities. So I want to begin with that. You know, who is this person who's kind of going into diverse directions? And Manali, how did you choose this kind? Did it happen to you, or how did you just go into this?
First of all, Chavi, thanks for having me on this platform. And before I begin on my own journey, I will emphasize the importance of the work that you're doing because, we take mental health for granted for a lot, until such time as we hit the wall. And that's probably when we realize what mental health is about. So to pay attention to it in the normal course of life is by far the most understated thing in our society, in our culture. So thank you for starting this. Coming to my own journey, uh, yeah, it's the whole the whole experience or journey of real estate was a part of a larger canvas. Because when I started off, when I did my first series of paintings, which I exhibited, the abstract paintings, I had come to a point where I realized that until and unless I uh, explore firsthand, experience firsthand what human existence and endeavor is. And that essentially translates to, in a very crude sense, understanding money, because money is what is, runs through life as blood. Uh, and in a very crude sense, I'm not talking about paper money per se. I'm talking about human transaction, which is a part of survival. And to understand that, you have to understand finance, or at least the basics of transaction, economic transaction. And while I I explored various avenues. With another friend, we were contemplating doing, that was the boom time in Hyderabad. This happened soon after I had done, animation. I'd come to realize that until and unless understood the business aspect of things, I would be limited to the art part of it, which was for me limiting in terms of understanding. For me, art is not about painting on a canvas. It is about understanding what is happening within us. That gets translated onto any canvas, whether it is sculpture in stone, or painting on a canvas, on paper, or theater, or music, or anything that gets expressed. But the fundamental, the starting point is understanding what is happening within and what is playing outside. I mean, let me just put the framework over here. All my work, whether it was painting, whether it was animation, whether it was real estate, my fundamental framework was to understand human life and understand what is the cause and effect balance. And I have now, at this age of 55, I've come to realize that everything starts with your thought. It's something that's been said over and over and over, through the ages. Unfortunately, we don't internalize anything till we experience it firsthand. So if I tell you that, if I were to tell anybody that life begins with thought, it would sound mundane, it would sound obvious. Unfortunately, it is not obvious. It takes a moment. You have to pause everything, and you have to understand. You have to examine what your thought processes have been, and how they have translated into what is reflecting in your life. Now, let me give you an example. My pre-verbal uh, mental life, thought life, was of being connected with my parents. It was that I'm always connected with my parents. I won't go into the detail of the exact fantasies that I experienced at that time. I won't say I had fantasies. You don't have fantasies, you experience them. Because to say that you have fantasies means that you've created them yourself. It's a deliberate act. At a pre-verbal age, there's hardly a deliberate act. So it's more likely that it's remnants of your past life. I don't know, but those thoughts come from somewhere, or you're programmed to receive those thoughts. But the thoughts that I had was of being connected with my parents. And through my childhood, through my growing years, that was one thing that was always persistent. And as I grew up, it played into my life. It played into all the decisions that I made. And it was not, it was not that I made a conscious connect. It just became a part of my, part of my geography. However you would read it, it just made a part of my equation. And every decision I made, this got factored in.
All right.
So So when somebody tells me that you've taken such and such a decision, in my mind, when I explore it, I realize that that decision happened a long time ago. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, we understand. We're trying to this.
Yeah.
Actually, there is one comment here that they want us to do the session in Hindi. Also, a little bit of mix of Hindi and English. So I just thought I'll just
Sure. Yeah.
this. So if we can, while we are exploring, there is one self-portrait that you have done of yourself. So if I will just request if we can see that self-portrait and
Yeah.
this one. So what went into this when you did this? It's very difficult to do a self-portrait. And
Yes, this was when I had started going to, an art studio. There was an art studio where you had, various artists come and, do their work. We were given assignments, by the senior artist. So we were given a couple of assignments, and this was not exactly a part of that assignment, but this is what I did during that period. And I think this was as honest a self-portrait as I could do. I must have been about 25 when I did it. Yeah, I must have been about 25 when I did it.
So
And yeah.
tell us what it, even now when you see it, what are the things that essentially make Mrinalini Mrinalini when you see this portrait?
Uh, Actually, at that time, I felt like a 40-year-old. I didn't know what it was to be like a 40-year-old, but I felt like a 40-year-old. So it probably reflects in my face. There's no youth in the face. It's more of, it's like somebody really burdened. I mean, I don't identify with that portrait anymore. Thankfully, no.
Okay, and
Yeah.
we have okay, and we have another portrait of yours. We are going to be showing your paintings because they. I mean, like you just said, that the journey. How do you when you're creating? You just said that when a creation is actually a journey, it's your personal journey. So this other one, I really want to understand what was happening and what is this person without the eyes, or is it?
Okay. Yeah, now let me do this bit in Hindi because I think Hindi is more universal. अच्छा ये मैंने किया था आई
Yeah.
थिंक 20-22 साल की उम्र में और ये मेरा मतलब जो मतलब जितना भी मेरे अंदर 20 साल का यू नो आई वोंट से गुस्सा 20 सालों की उलझनें थी मैं जो अंदर की गुत्थियां थी वो मैं उनको सुलझाने में लगी हुई थी और उसमें अंधकार बहुत था मैं आई डोंट वांट टू यूज द वर्ड डिप्रेशन क्योंकि दिस वाज नॉट ये सिर्फ डिप्रेशन नहीं था ये उलझन थी मतलब जो जिंदगी को समझने की जो उलझन होती है उसको एक एक तार होती है ना उसको सुलझाने की मैं उस स्टेज पे थी सो दिस वाज नॉट इसका कोई इंस्पिरेशन नहीं था कि मैंने कोई चीज और किसी को देख के किया कि किसी को देख के ऐसा लगा कि मुझे ये करना चाहिए ये अंदर का मतलब मैंने जो तब तक दुनिया देखी थी और उसका मेरे अंदर जो सार बना वो इसमें निकला है तो मुझे लगता है जो आज के ज़माने में जब आप बच्चों को नहीं युवकों को देखते हो जो उस उम्र में होते हैं और अपनी उम्र से बहुत आगे की सोचते हैं मैं उस हालत में थी मतलब लगता है कि पूरी दुनिया का जो बोझ है अपने सर पे लेके घूमते हो उस उम्र में क्योंकि आपको सोचने का तरीका नहीं आता you don't understand how to think. You don't understand how to tailor your thinking, for the purpose of transacting with the world. मतलब एक व्यवहार के तौर पे जो आपको किस तरह से सोचना है और आपको किस तरह से दुनिया के साथ व्यवहार करना है वो सोचने का तरीका हर किसी को आसानी से नहीं समझ में आता और कई बार हम जब उलझनों में पड़ते हैं वो इसी के कारण पढ़ते हैं और एक बात ये है कि जो हमारी शिक्षा की प्रणाली है उसमें इस बात को लेके मुझे लगता है हमने कहीं ज्यादा ध्यान नहीं दिया है हम बच्चों को पढ़ा तो लेते हैं कि जो हम पढ़ाते हैं वो ज्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन के तौर पे होता है न कि व्यवहार के तौर पे कि आपको जिंदगी जीने के लिए आपके पास क्या टूल्स होने चाहिए So this, I think, is something that is missing at a very basic level of education.
So,
And I find that persists even in later years, until and unless people make a conscious effort of self-learning.
So, Mrinalini, see, as I see it, that a psychologist, you would have had that advantage क्योंकि psychology in itself आपको introspection करना थोड़ा सिखाती है और थोड़ा ये होता है कि you were creative, you've put out things here, and there must be so much. Of course, एक comment भी आया है DC से कि it is existential and just, या हम इसको, और एक और question आया है कि is there a special role for twins in your life and in your art, and of course that's a we can take that question up later. लेकिन ये जो आपका है ये, so where different things, I mean, of course, your creativity and psychology can be connected, but realistic. So how do you think, kahin pe, did you ever feel that that's, why did you, I mean, art, why didn't you pursue a career in art? Everybody would want to do that because you were a professional. I mean, your exhibitions at one time were, you were doing exhibitions, everything. And then what made you just drop it and just go into a area which most people say is non-artistic? Or you've bought art, you, is,
No, this was a very conscious decision. But before I go there, I'll mention one thing. You were talking about having the advantage of being a student of psychology. I always consider myself a student of psychology. Um, when I was in the 10th, I think, yeah, I think it was around the 10th, that would have been in the late 1970s. When I read this book called Sybil. It was about this girl who underwent extreme trauma and abuse at a very young age. She was a teenager, and she had split her personality into 16 different personalities,
yeah,
and I'm sure you're aware of it, Chavi. You know about it, and her psychologist
yeah,
helped her reintegrate herself into who she was. And that book made a huge impact on me because it made me realize a few things. One is that it helped me put my own trauma. I mean, I had a childhood trauma which I haven't really spoken about, but I think I will mention it over here more because our age we don't mention it. um, I had at the age of about 6, been molested, and this is something that nobody knew. And I was too young to know how to articulate it. And in many ways, that took away my childhood and my many years until I studied psychology. Sybil helped me put it in perspective in that it just made me realize how insignificant my experience was. Now, there's a conflict over here in the environment we live in, and the extreme situation that we have with Nirbhaya and all of that. But one thing I want to emphasize over here is, there are two different things. One is, the act of violence and molestation and all of that, which is an external thing and needs to be addressed, whether it is socially, legally, and that is one aspect. I'm talking about the internal dynamics over here. The story that a victim tells oneself, or even recognizes oneself, or rather categorizes oneself as a victim, is where the whole thing takes off. I was too young to, I didn't know the word victim. I just knew that as an experience, and as an experience which caused a lot of anxiety and confusion, and at all levels, at physical, psychological, emotional levels. It made me an emotional and social recluse for a better part of my life. When I read Sybil, it helped me put that in perspective, and it also, exposed me to the extreme, situations that a human being could live through and survive. And uh, and that actually, it was then that I started to defocus from myself and focus on the world itself and the human existence itself. So the larger question of human existence started playing into me at that point of time. And of course, studying psychology helped. So when I studied psychology and I did my master's in DU, it was already, I was on a different plane of understanding and exploring. Coming to the jump from art to real estate, I had come to a point in art where there are different I'm just digressing over here. I want to put the context here. There are different aspects to art. or rather, to craft. Your art will be craft, or your art will be graphic art, depending on how you do it and what you do with it. Creative art means there's something that you're creating from scratch, and without any direct external stimulus. Let me put it that way. Abstract art, specifically abstract art. So I had come to a point where my abstract art was reaching a point of becoming more of a graphic, combining colors and combining shapes. More, the focus was more on the form and the beauty of it, rather than it having any creative meaning to me. So that's when I put down the brush and I said, I need to understand something more to be actually creative. So I did all that I had on the canvas and I left it at that. And when I took up real estate, I put down the brush because I said, if I am to learn real estate, I can't do it until and unless I give myself to it completely. The same way that I give myself completely to art. I mean, if you have to do something, if you have to understand something, you've got to surrender to it. If I went, if I had my brush in one hand and the real estate in one hand, I know, art is a very jealous master. It takes everything from you. So if I let that go, I would never understand real estate. I would never be able to do any justice to my work. I wouldn't be true to myself, and I wouldn't be true to my work. So that was a conscious decision. And now I've come to a point where I can comfortably, work on both fronts. You grow. I mean, you grow to a point of felicity, to a point of, being proficient enough to be able to handle, what you're doing. It's, whatever it is that you're doing, you're there with it, in it. Then you had a question about twins. What was that again?
There is a question somebody's asked, पर मैं एक बार बोल देती हूँ जो भी audience, please you can ask questions. आप इनका जो आपको दिख रहा है उसमें type कर दीजिए and we will take the questions. There was this question from Mahesh Murthy. Is there a special role for twins in your life and in your art?
Actually, it is something that I've come to realize of late. Not so much as twins, but as but the duality of things. What goes on in your head is what goes on outside. So that's, if I have to talk about twins, yes, that's the twinning. I had a very interesting experience a few years back, at the Jaipur Literary Festival, when there was this discussion on, on the basis of Indian philosophy, and the whole context of the Indian thought is the twinning, of the observer and the doer, which are both actually within us.
Yes.
They're both within us. So that, so that does become, a part of. It does become a part of the whole dialogue within.
We like to share. You write poetry, and of course, you want to. If you can read out a few lines from one of your poetry, and meanwhile we will also paintings. And one that I can see behind seems so. It is. What would you say for that? That is somehow so beautiful and so positive. At least I see it as this.
This was actually the last one that I did before I put down the brush. And this was done, I would say, really for my mother, because my mother really didn't care for my paintings. She says, don't make my house a museum. That used to be her. She was afraid. So I would have to stack all the paintings away. But when I did this one, she made me promise I would never sell it. So this is her painting. So I actually put it up for her.
Okay, very beautiful. It is. I mean, I don't know. It just seems, if I have to interpret, it's like, this is a positive. It's a new life only. It's you going to a new.
Yeah, it was new life for me too, because a lot of things changed after I did this. A lot of perspectives changed after I did this.
And I want to also ask you that, uh, you know, when you're talking about this, so how does there have been many first time decisions, which it was one, it was a breakthrough. I haven't met very many people who are into a construction company, women. And the other part is that you decide, I mean, how difficult were your life choices? You took some very difficult choices. You're single, you decided to stay single. I know that is not a question I should be asking, but I thought, let me ask because
No,
you would tell.
yeah, I think being single is very easy. I won't say very easy now, but a much more accepted life choice now. It was not so at our time. In fact, I know my parents were badgered quite a bit, because of the choice I made, and I think one of the reasons I managed to live my life choices the way I wanted to was largely the backing that I got from my family, both my parents, as well as my siblings. Uh, that helped me do. I pretty much like to say what I want to do, but I think it is more of what I chose to do. The other important part was uh, taking responsibility for my life choices. At the end of the day, whatever choice I made was my responsibility alone. The consequences were mine alone. Even if I let somebody else make a choice for me, that still was my responsibility. And I think that was something that that came to me when I was in my 30s, and it was actually a moment of realization that it came to me at, I would say, the lowest point in my life, and that realization turned things for me inside. The whole world looked different to me when I came to that realization that it is not within my power to change life, existence. What is within my power is to change my response to it. So one is to take responsibility for everything that the manner in which you are reacting to everything in life. And the other is to allow life to happen to you. When you take responsibility for life, then you don't fear it, because see, at the end of the day, nobody comes out of it alive. I mean, it's very cliched but true, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's the worst case scenario. So when I have to take a decision, and I have to take a tough decision, uh, my tool I would say is to actually go to the worst case scenario. Zyada se zyada kya hoga? I've also imagined myself in jail. I mean, being in real estate, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I mean, a lot of things I can't, I can't be saying publicly, but I've imagined myself in jail. I've imagined much worse. I've gone to places on barren land. I've been chased on roads. You don't know whether you're going to come out of it alive. I've seen all that. That momentary fear was there, but you don't regret anything because that's what you chose to do, and you lived through it and you survived. So
Yeah.
it's you if you want. I wanted to understand life. I needed to put myself there, and until and unless I did that, I wouldn't get that learning. Today I have that learning because I've taken that risk,
You
and
know,
thankfully
sorry.
I've had a lot of support. You can't do it
Yeah.
without support.
Yeah, I know, and I mean, at some point, standing up for what one believes in and not giving into social pressure is a it is a big step, and it requires a lot of strength of character, strength of conviction, and I think you are an epitome of that. There is another question that I think we would like to show some more of your paintings, and I would request if your paintings can be shown. But there's another question from Mahesh Murthy that it's not a question. I know that you recently lost one of your parents. You lost your father, and
Yeah.
I mean, in this whole incident, in this lockdown and everything, and you did everything alone. So the question that is that will this nudge make you take a part again? Because people are saying, please take a part, please take a part. They want you to
Yeah.
pick up the brush.
Yeah, I owe it to my father because my father actually was my first teacher. He taught me how to sketch. When I initially started sketching, I would use the eraser and use a cotton swab and use my finger to shade. And he just told me, he said, leave everything and first learn to control your tool. So he taught me how to control the pencil, get the right effect that I wanted with controlling the pencil. And then he said, after that, you can do it. In many ways, he taught me almost everything that I know about art. At the very basic level, he set the foundation there. I owe it to him to take it up. In fact, I've just put out the canvases recently. It's just been about it's going to be a month since he left, but I think he's it's more of I think you move into another dimension. You don't just leave. So I feel his presence in a different dimension, and it's probably it's going to be a new life. I still haven't come. I mean, I don't know whether coming to terms with it is something that's going to happen, or that's already happened. I don't know. This is something that I've never experienced. I don't know. I don't know what it is going to lead to tomorrow. But yes, I do intend to go back to
we have people. You should. We have so many people your art, and they would want you to take up the brush. They would want you to take up the.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This is huge encouragement. I will. I mean, I in many ways, taking up the brush is going to be painful because it's going to make me revisit a lot of pain, which some there is one thing about experience that you've got to live in it. So one of the one factor that kept me away from taking the brush also is revisiting pain. And I guess now I'll probably be getting back there, but in a much stronger way. In that I know I know the path, I know the journey, I know the signboards, I know what to look for. So it's not that one is lost. One always knows that there's the end of the tunnel will always come. At a younger time, and this is what I want to tell the youngsters. जब आप हाँ जब आप 19 20 के 22 के होते हो तो आपको पता नहीं है कि जब आप परेशानी में होते हो उस दौर का कहीं अंत होता है, और उस बात का विश्वास रखना ही आपको उस पूरी जर्नी के अंत तक देखता है. अगर आप उससे निराश हो जाते हो कि नहीं इसका अंत नहीं आने वाला, that's when you have a problem. अब ये है कि when you come to a later life, when you come to when you've experienced enough life, you realize that life plays this cycle and you've got to accept it for whatever it plays out. Unfortunately, a lot of the pressure comes to us not so much from within us. हमें ज्यादा परेशानी अपने आप से नहीं होती, हमें दूसरों से होती है. जबकि जब आप सो जाते हो आप दुनिया के साथ नहीं सोते हो. जब आप आंखें मूंदते हो रात को, यू आर अलोन, आप अकेले होते हो, आपके साथ दुनिया नहीं सोती. जिस दिन आपकी आंखें बंद हो जाएंगी ये दुनिया खत्म हो जाएगी. आपके लिए प्रलय वो दिन है जब आप दुनिया के लिए आंखें बंद कर लेते हो. तो आप दुनिया को इतनी अहमियत दोगे कि वो आपकी जिंदगी पे इतना हावी हो कि आपको परेशान करेगा. उस बात को गहराई से सोचने की जरूरत है. That you don't allow the world to overtake you to such an extent, other people's opinions to overtake you to such an extent. There are a lot of things you have to do to accept, anger, pain, shame and guilt. I have to say this, shame and guilt are the two tools that are used to suppress. If you are able to handle these two things and not be afraid of them, you will come out much stronger. Handle shame, go through it and come out of it and let it wash over you like it was nothing. Whether it is shame, whether it is guilt, it should trigger within you a process of introspection. I'm not saying leave, you should be untouched by it. It should help you grow within, but not to the extent that you allow somebody to suppress you. That is important.
Yeah, there is a lot of there are questions coming in, and they are, because ये है कह रहे हैं कि impression thought on the how confluence of art and like digital art today, and
What do you think?
see, it is like what is your impression on the confluence of arts from all over the world now that we have access to art at a fingertips? And there's another question which I would want you to take, is that how do you think digital world is changing arts, if it is,
See,
if
of course it is.
changing that? Can you see? Huh.
See, digital. Now we have to. Now I'm going to naturally talk about it from my own personal experience and perspective. Art, first and foremost, is a human endeavor. It's a human expression. When you are talking about digital art, you are expressing the state of human endeavor. It is mechanized. So digital art is basically reflecting the mechanized state of society. That is the involvement of technology in human society. The question is not so much as what about digital art, but what about human endeavor, human thought, human growth. Is the external technology, the growth of external technology, going ahead of our own internal development?
That's a very
uh,
interesting point.
Understand, I'll come back to the question of twinning. Okay, the twinning is, this is your external and this is your internal. Your external world is progressing. Your technology, you're reaching the moon, you're going to mine from the moon, you're reaching Mars, you're reaching Saturn, you're touching the sun. The question is, where is your internal thought reaching? And now I'll just like to put this in perspective. If we do not realize or understand the extent or possibility of internal development, we have to just pay attention to one thing. One of the samhitas, which is the in Indian scriptures, it mentions the effect of sunspots, the shape, the size, the direction, the duration, the effect of a sunspot on the sun, on the agriculture, on rivers, on animals, on human beings, on human prosperity, on human mental health. And this is at a time when we had zero technology as we know it. Just to fathom what kind of internal dynamics it took to be able to come to that kind of precise conclusion is even now beyond us. So we are, digital art is only reflecting this, what we are. And if digital art is, see, we are right now in a state of multitudes. I won't say that, we've stagnated. We are progressing. But we have to, each step of the way, stop and ask ourselves, what is our progression leading to? And until and unless the process outside does not match the process within, there'll be a time where we become dependent on machines and we lose control over ourselves. And that is going to be a very difficult time. I mean, you're talking about making machines that think. When you haven't perfected human thought itself, you haven't perfected control of human thought. If that is going to be a compensation outside because we don't, want, I'll give you a simple example. I have an app, I can order a pizza. So I have control over technology to order a pizza. The question is, do I have control over myself to understand when I need to have that pizza or not, or whether it is good for me internally or not? These are two different aspects of the same coin.
Very well said. It is just simply put it.
Yeah, so that line which is dividing them is extremely fine, and most of the time it goes unrecognized.
Yeah. it puts into perspective a lot of things about digital and this and your own art and everything.
Yes, and one of the things I'd like to add here is this is a bit of a churning that's been happening to me lately, especially during the lockdown. A lot of my worry has been after the lockdown, are we going? We've had such wonderful experiences. I mean, we've had bad experiences about a lot of people um, going through a lot of tribulation and going through loss, personal loss at all levels. We've also had experiences of animals finding their space and freedom. We have experiences of the Himalayas finally being visible to us from places where the Himalayas say you don't need to come to us. We are here already. Question is, what are we going to do after this? Are we all going to go back onto our normal routine of going trekking and going touring without asking ourselves how much of what it is doing to everything, to nature, to habitat, to humanity. A simple example: the lockdown in Delhi has partially opened, and the pollution levels have started increasing again. And it's hardly 20% of the vehicular traffic that is back. So these questions brought me to a point where if we have to go ahead, we are going to have to work on our internal technology now, the internal mechanisms of holding yourself back, understanding what you want to do and what you want to possess, and what impact it has on the world around. I've tried to reduce the plastics, as much as I can. Extreme steps lead to extreme, you pull the pendulum in one direction, it's going to swing in the other direction. So, what Buddha says, the middle path. So you've got to find a middle path where you can function in the mainstream and yet go, if you're going to do damage on one side, recognize the damage and then compensate it on the other side. And I mean, that's what I would say would be to stick to the middle path. I saw a beautiful video of this young girl I think in either Europe or USA, who lives in a zero waste environment. Her house produces no waste. I know it's impossible for most of us, but yes, we are used to recycling. We are used to recycling in a very good way, and I think those are things that we need to inculcate, and we need to be careful about the choices we make going forward. How many clothes do you want to have? N number of clothes just because they are available and you can buy them. These are the kind of questions that worry me. Of what kind of choices people are going to make. Luckily, I see the younger generation are a lot more conscious about about questions of the environment. But this again is the question. The finding the balance between business, the economy, the well-being of people, and what is good for the planet.
There are questions that have. Yes, sorry.
We can't take ourselves away now. Now, after 22nd of March, we've entered into a world where this question is in all our faces. We can't wish it away. We can't ignore it. It's going to be in our face for the rest of our lives. Whatever we do, what is its impact on others and on the planet?
So, as a person who's lived the art, you've been very introspective about how and what you're producing. How do you think we can use art to influence the behavior of others? If you have to see, because for you it's been a personal journey. So whether it is these leaves that you've made, dry leaves, or that object drawing painting, it's been a personal journey. Somewhere sublimation. How will you use it for this?
See, art when it is purposeful art, it usually moves into another category, where it is done for a specific purpose. For example, I would give the example of, say, Kama Sutra, where what are those temples? I'm forgetting the name.
Khajuraho.
Uh, sorry,
Khajuraho temple.
Khajuraho.
Khajuraho.
Yeah, Khajuraho. Where, where art is purposeful. Even Kama Sutra is written, purposefully written. All right, to educate the public. Unfortunately, we are, the modern civilization, arts are uh, both education and expression, but less, not the kind of education that we have seen in, say, in in the ancient world, if I can call it that. It was very practical education. It was very basic and very practical. I won't, yeah, basic maybe, yeah, but very practical education.
All right.
Now we are, yeah, now we are, now the education we have is, how to survive, how to fight, how to how to negotiate. It's a very different kind of education. I mean, a lot of the art that's being produced is, if I can put it that way, it's it's activist art. Uh, that is seen. Um, it is a statement of the times we are in. We are in a we are in a state of flux where we are not at peace with ourselves. We are not at peace with each other, and a large part of that has to do with the kind of structures that we have built. I won't say deliberately, but they've grown out of accident. Whether it is the economic structure, whether it is a social structure. See, earlier you had smaller units. The village units had a structure within their control. The population was less. Now, because there is so much of there's so much of interaction with the outside world, that is almost difficult to control the social structure. Because if you have 10 people saying one thing, there will be one person who has the right to be different, and then the right of the 10 weigh against the right of one, and there is no resolution. The effect is all the 11 people suffer. So we are we've brought ourselves into a constant state of suffering. And it is our doing. It is our collective doing. See, there is collective, I strongly believe in collective intelligence. And collective intelligence brings about situations which otherwise are not predicted. I still have to come to terms with, with the infection that's going around. I don't know what the collective intelligence is over here, but I do get a feeling, I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but how many people didn't wish that they'd had enough of stressful work and just wanted to be at home with their families? I mean, if we did a straw poll on that and just tried to figure out what collective intelligence was leading to, I think it'd be a revelation.
Very interesting. Very interesting. There is another question, and there are many more questions. There is one question. What is your motivation?
What is
Motivation, I will say.
I'm
Yeah, what is your motivation?
I'm a very undermotivated person. I'm an
No, but what
extremely
keeps
lazy
you?
person.
Yeah, but what keeps you going? I
I
would just
think
add qualified.
if there is if there is a fear that I have, it is of giving into my own laziness, and that's the only thing that keeps me going. I can be very lazy. I know it in my core, and that's the only thing that shakes me out of my slumber. It's my own shortcomings that keep me going, really.
But this concept of collective and comments there, that global village syndrome and everything, and I want to come back to you as a person, because all this, this is, of course, this is also you and your ideas and everything. I want to come back to moments where you've been, have you experimented with very many things, or how have you been able to, uh, you know, uh, there's been a lot of pressure for falling in line, and you've always been out. And so what were the things
I
that
think
brought you happiness, those things to
that's
to
interesting. Yeah.
de-stress, chill out?
I think I was I was a silent rebel before I knew it. I went to a school that I hated, and the only way I could get myself out of it was by I just stopped studying, to a point where my mother finally said, "Okay, we're done with your schooling," and I was just in the fifth standard, and I was very happy. I said, "No school from next year." I couldn't ask for anything more. And then they put me into a central school, and the first day was horrendous by anybody's standards, but it was a wonderful experience for me. We sat in this in this thatched hut which had rain dripping, and there was such a fat book of ancient India, भारत का इतिहास, इतनी मोटी किताब थी और ऊपर से पानी टपक रहा था. दो लोगों की बेंच पे 5 लड़कियां बैठी थी. That was the situation, and I absolutely loved it. I think you have. I found pleasure in small things. I used to spend hours, with a magnifying glass, sometimes even without that, looking at the smallest flowers that I could amongst the grass. And I would watch these really small insects crawling over them, and then I would look up. That usually was at the evening time, and that's when the stars come out. Then I would look up at the sky and I would watch the stars come out, and I would mark which star comes out when. And then it brought a question to my mind that the way I was looking down at those insects and those flowers was somebody looking down at us. So you were asking me who I am. I realized that our essence is actually very vast. So it's how far you allow your boundaries to, how far you explore your boundaries, because they exist. I mean, those boundaries actually don't exist. It's मतलब हमारी अपनी नजर कहाँ आती है, वहां तक हमारी boundary है. So our horizons are only as far as our eyes go. The question is, can you shut your eyes and just let your boundaries go? Which is actually boundless. So the imagination goes up and down and side and all over the place. And that's probably been that's been my definition of myself, really. I don't think I was bounded or I am bounded, and it's not something that I've done deliberately. It's just been a part of a self discovery, nothing else. And what gave me maximum happiness, I have to say, two little children gave me more happiness than, I think I ever experienced with anything else. My sister's children, who were with us during their childhood. And it was a new life for me because, I came to a point where I would see them and I would ask myself that when they grow up and they ask me a question, कि मासी ये क्या है, आपने ये क्यों किया, आपने ये क्यों किया. That question drove me to making the choices that I did, and I always kept that in mind when I gave myself an answer, that if they had this question, what is it that I wanted them to do? And that's the life choice that I made. So in many ways, they became my teachers without realizing it. They drove my direction.
That's very, I mean, that's very powerfully said. And you've lived, I mean, you've been one strong person. We talk of people, in in these series, all the women that have come here, they've all spoken about how three things. The only thing को separate करती है वो ये है. For me, the learning has been कि you have been observant, you've been sensitive to everything around, and even the minutest things, all of you have converted into it. You've used anything, जो भी challenges are, you've used it, you've channelized it, sublimated it, and you've used it to your maybe an advantage, if I use the word. I see this beautiful painting of two shoes, and it is so. I mean, talking to a psychologist is different. So, how would you analyze it as a third-person perspective, not as Mrinalini, but as somebody you would see as the clinical psychologist?
Okay, I see. Understanding art from the perspective of a student of psychology, I have to say, the art somewhere will reflect the person that you are. And for me, the greatest revelations, were. I went to Europe actually to see Van Gogh's art, because he was my absolute, he was really the artist as far as I was concerned. But the revelation for me was Picasso, because I ended up going to the Picasso Museum, and I realized that here was a man who would lift anything and see art in it. He would lift a spoon and see art in it. You have to really see his work to believe it. So yes, art is in. Art is in everything. It's your eye that sees it. So it's if I have to tell you in psychological terms, it's your rhythm. Art is your rhythm. It's your visual rhythm. It's your it's your oral rhythm. It's how you see things. So if you are dissonant, in how you experience life, your art is going to be dissonant. It's for me. My art has been about exploring and finding harmony. So the harmony you see behind me has come out of a lot of churning. So I came to a point where I said, okay, this is what it is, and this, I made peace with myself. I said, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to let life happen to me. I'm not. I could never set goals for myself. It was just too much of a construct for me. Life was never a construct. It just happened to me. So it's like, you're on a ship, you let it sail, you give it direction now and then, but you don't decide the course. The course has been decided. There's somebody else who's leading that boat. We have to realize that. We can paddle the boat and feel happy with splashing the water, feel the breeze, we can turn the steering wheel, feel happy that we are in control, but we are not in control. There's somebody else who's moving that boat. There's somebody else who's decided its journey. There's somebody else who's made that river on which that boat is. Once we give into that, we are a lot more at peace with ourselves. And art is really about finding that harmony, expressing that harmony, whichever way you express it.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful session. And if there are any more questions, you can ask. But I don't know how time just flies when we hold these conversations, and I don't know how to thank you for being with us.
I have to accuse you of bringing me out of my comfort zone, Chavi. I would have never done this but for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because
thank you, everyone.
Just for all the people here, if you also have a story, we would be very happy to host you here. If you feel you want to say something, we have got you stories of people who have lived life to the fullest, who are examples that we can all follow. और इनके लिए क्योंकि इन्होंने जो बोला है, इन्होंने वो करा है, जो चीज में बिलीव करा है, it is very difficult. And here we have people who you don't need to, feminism and everything else is just a word. It's how you live your life. वहीं से empowerment दिखती है. And we've had very empowered people. And conversationist, it's about a movement. You tell us your stories, and you can go on and send us a message on our Facebook page. You can just send us a message if you want your story to be heard. We will be very happy to host you. Mrinalini, thank you so much. It's been
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all your team.
And thank you for that cover, your painting that you let me use for my book of poems also.
My absolute delight.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.